Peace to everyone. Actually, let me start that over. Peace and love to everyone. You gotta add the love into it every now and then so people know that it's real. All right. So here's the topic of today's video, and brace yourself because this is gonna be a good one. Today we're gonna be talking about three main things. We're gonna talk about a shooting that happened in June 17th. Is it June or July? June 17th, 2015. This happened at a church in South Carolina. The Charleston shooting that happened. A few people already know about it. A lot of people know about it. But now I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper. Then we're going to talk about Denmark Vessey. Who was Denmark Vessey? What did he do? What did he stand for? What happened to him? Then we're going to talk a little bit about religion and spirituality. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to tie everything up. And then you're going to understand why I did what I did with all the three topics. Okay? So let's start with the shooting that happened June 17, 2015. This happened in South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, when a young man, a Caucasian, walked into a Bible study that was currently going on at the AME Church, which is the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Church walked into the Bible study, prayed with them or participated in the Bible study, and then when he felt like he was done receiving all the information or knowledge or whatever it is, he shot and killed 9 people, including a pastor, a senator, a reverend, and then 4 other members. There was one of the witnesses that survived said that after he shot and killed 9 people, he spoke to her and said that, "I'm leaving you alive because I want you to tell the story." It was captured a day later, and the cops arrested him. He wasn't harmed. He was arrested peacefully. Some people know why I'm saying that. He was arrested peacefully. And then guess what? He was hungry, so they took him to Burger King. So now let's think a little bit. If I'm a police officer and you just finished committing a crime, let's say you just finished raping a bunch of women, I'm arresting you for pedophilia or armed robbery, murder, whatever it is. If I don't agree with what you did, there is no way I am going to take you to get food. So I'm saying that because if they were turned off by his actions, which is murdering 9 innocent people, why would they take him to Burger King? Because now you got to think about it. If you're inside a police car, especially for a crime that you're allegedly committed, because you're innocent until proven guilty, you're put in handcuffs. So now, how did he get the money? Did they go into his pockets? Did they even pay for the food? So now you got to ask some questions. Did they pay for the food? Were they getting Burger King for themselves? But based on what the FBI said, they took him to Burger King. But now let's think about it. Let's slow down just a little bit. I'm a Christian or Catholic or whatever it is, and I'm in church. I'm studying the Bible, the Word of God. I'm praying with my pastors, the reverend, and everybody. And there's a shooter in here. And God can send me messages through my prayers or through my fastings or through me devoting my life to him for years. And he can tell me, listen, there's a guy in that church that's about to shoot the place up. You need to leave or you need to call the cops. I don't need to be in that church, and I don't need to be praying to that kind of God. It sounds crazy. It sounds weird maybe to some people. But if you think about it, you're in church, you're connecting to the Lord, you're learning the book, you're praying. Like, that's the perfect time for something like that to never go down, or shooting inside a church while people are praying. So you can save all of that extra stuff about, that's just how God wanted it. No, I highly doubt that he wanted you to get killed like that and to terrify and traumatize the other people that survived. Okay? People love to say, oh, I had a dream, or the Holy Spirit touched me, or God touched me, or God told me this. Then he should have been able to tell you to get out the church. And I'm not making light of the situation, and I'm not laughing at people. I truly want people to understand that. I'm just simply trying to address certain things that people don't talk about. Like, if I'm in my house, nobody's coming in here and robbing and beating people. Nobody. You're going to have to knock me out first. And if I'm God, remember, God sees everything, knows everything, hears everything, knows what you do before you do it. So there's no ways things like that to happen. But let's fast forward a little bit. Anyway, so he was arrested and taken to prison. So now let's look at Denmark Vessey. Who's Denmark Vessey? Denmark Vessey was an African-American man, a slave, born around 1767. you don't really know date of births for slaves because remember, they were imported, like they import rice. They imported them from Africa or from other parts of the island after they took them from Africa to begin with. And nobody kept date of birth and stuff like that. So he was born in 1767. He was sold into slavery to a man in South Carolina. Whenever you're sold into slavery, for the most part, they name you after your slave owner. That's why a lot of African Americans have names like Johnson, Vessey, and so on, McLaughlin, whatever, all those names. It's because they were named after the slave owners. Okay, so he was sold, and then he was a slave for about 20 years. Eventually, he won the lottery, and he was able to buy his freedom. So yes, they had lotteries back in the days. He won $1,500, $1,500, which is a lot of money back in those days. And he was able to buy his freedom for $600. Bought his freedom and was not able to buy the freedom of his wife and kids. So, of course, nobody wants to be a slave. That hurt him, that made him feel somehow, as it should, because you're not trying to be a slave anyway. So anyway, he opened up a business, carpentry, so it was very popular. His business was successful. And eventually, he was one of the founders of a AME church, the same AME church that the shooting happened. So a lot of people don't know that same church has been around for over 200 years. That church was actually created in 1816, around 1816, 1817. And it's been it's the largest congregation in the South. So it's been around for that long. It's also been burned by white supremacists, and it's been attacked multiple times. That same church has been a symbol for black resistance and slavery. A lot of protests have been organized, movements have been organized from there, and so on, right? So the shooting that happened was deeper than just a regular shooting. That was more of a message. Also, the FBI disclosed that the shooter, I'm not going to say his name because the thing with serial killers and psychopaths and stuff like that, they want people to glamorize them or to remember them. So saying their name, putting their name all in news and so on, it only empowers them. So I'm not going to say his name. But once you Google Charleston, South Carolina shooting, his name, picture, all of that stuff will come up. So research it if you need to. And the FBI said that he actually drove over 2 hours a few times to go and scope out that church. So this man lived about 2 hours away. He drove that far to scope out that church. So this was not just a random act. This was something that was planned. So back to Denmark Vesey. He was one of the co-founders of that same church. And what did he do? Eventually got tired of slavery, and he was like, we're going to do something. Allegedly, right? Allegedly, because you know how it goes. It's hard to get all of that information concrete from back then, because remember, slaves weren't allowed to read and write in the beginning. Later on, it was against the law for them to read and write. And then later on, they gave you the Bible to read. So let me not digress. So he starts planning a rebellion. One of the men that he hired to be part of the people that help him recruit slaves and so on, his name is Gullah Jack, Gullah. This was a man that was also brought in from Africa, except he was a priest who practiced African spirituality. I always tell people, you weren't really Christians until they brought you here, because then you had to convert to Christianity. As a matter of fact, one of the things that slave owners were encouraged to do was to convert slaves to Christianity, because it made you more submissive, because there's multiple passages in there that talks about slaves obey your masters, forgive and forget, thou shalt not kill, all of those things that they pretty much programmed into the slave's mind to get them to not rebel. So what Denmark Vesey did was he used part of the Old Testament, which Exodus 21:16, which talks about if you get kidnapped, because they were kidnapped and enslaved, you're allowed to kill your oppressors. This is also why I say the Bible is very contradicting. On one page it'll tell you love your neighbors, thou shalt not kill. Another page it'll tell you to slaughter people, to kill people, to take their land, and to do so on and so forth. So Denmark Vesey was using parts of the Old Testament. He started gathering some slaves together, and they started planning a rebellion. And like I said, he used Gullah Jack because him being a priest in African spirituality, and he was well respected and feared by slaves, he was able to convince them that, okay, let's join this movement, let's see what we can do. And then what happened? And so this rebellion never happened. Never. And guess why it never happened? Because a black man snitched on the people that were trying to rebel. And what was their plan? Their plan was to slaughter as much of the oppressors as possible, take over as much places as possible, take over the shipping yard, and then board on a ship and head straight to Haiti. Why Haiti? Haiti got their independence 1804. Haitian Revolution started 1791. And how did Haiti get their independence? What they did was they practiced African spirituality. This is all historical documents. You can go look it up. They got together, a group of Africans that were taken in Haiti, right? Remember, it wasn't even Haiti back then. I think it was Saint Domingue. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Excuse me if I'm not. They got together. They did some spiritual worship. They slaughtered a black pig, and they drank the blood and make the pact and vowed that we are going to kill as much French people, because they were colonized by the French, as much French people as possible until we get our freedom. So that started in 1791. It went on for about 12 years. Later on, the French gave up and Haiti got their freedom. So you see the difference in what happened when they practiced their African spirituality. So you might say, oh, it's nasty, they drank blood from a pig. Yeah, but you eat cow and you eat pig and stuff anyway. So you're little by little, you're taking in their blood, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not. So, and if I have to drink blood to be liberated, to be free, yeah, I'm going to drink some cow blood or some pig's blood. But it's just an example. So now let's get back to where we were. So an African American snitched on Denmark Vessey and the rebellion people that were trying to plan to take over, snitched on them and went and told his white owner, or his white slave owner, of the plan. So one, African Americans have been holding themselves back for centuries now. Two, the reason why he did it was because he was also a Christian and he believed in slaves obey your master, right? Thou shalt not kill. This is all documented. He believed in those things, which is why he went to snitch to his master. Master found out. They got white people together, the slaves patrol and so on, and they were able to capture about 100 of those slaves, and they ended up executing about 35 of them. And they said they deported the rest of them that they didn't kill, which is weird because one, I didn't know they were deporting slaves back to Africa back then. Two, I doubt it was true because they were killing black people for the smallest things. So why go through the point of putting them on a ship to deport it? They probably just tossed them in the water and just call it deportation. Honestly, for being real, that's probably what happened. So they deported them, and before they killed Gullah Jack and Denmark Vessey, they tortured those men. A lot of those men, they tortured them for a long time. So remember, you can talk back to a white slave owner, and you can be killed for that. So the kind of torture that they did, you can't even imagine. And these people still did not give up. They said they got about 9,000 people involved in this rebellion. So this would have been huge if George Wilson, which was his name, did not snitch on them, right? So this would have been huge. This honestly would have probably freed a big percentage of African Americans that were enslaved. So anyway, he snitched. They got caught. They caught about 100 people, lynched about 35 or killed about 35, and they deported the rest, which we probably know they killed. And guess what George Wilson got in return? They freed him. They let him go free because, he saved a lot of oppressors' lives. So let him go free. They gave him his freedom. And guess what happened to him? Later on, he ended up going insane and killing himself. I'm sorry, what do you really expect to happen, like mentally, psychologically? What do you think your ancestors that died before you are going to do to you if you snitch on people that are trying to free you, liberate you? It makes absolutely no sense. But on the other hand, that's why I say that the Bible is very contradicting. One side is telling you to kill people. The other side is telling you thou shalt not kill. Other side is telling you slave obey your masters because they have dominion or power over you. So that's why it messes people up, right? There is nothing in African spirituality that tells you if you're being oppressed, you need to just take the pain. You need to get slapped and turn the other cheek. That's why Haiti was able to get their revolution, their independence, because they practiced African spirituality, did what they had to do, killed who they had to kill, which sounds harsh, but hey, if I'm being oppressed and you're killing and raping and beating people around me that love me anyway, you got to go. This is just common sense. So they did what they had to do and they got their freedom. So now let's fast forward. George Wilson killed himself and went insane and killed himself. You can't kill yourself and then go insane. It's weird. But a similar story with that is the Black Panthers. When Huey P. Newton was killed, one of the men that snitched on him was also a black man, right? Was because the law enforcement, they had an undercover agent and a snitch working against the Black Panthers. And guess what happened to him? He ended up killing himself as well. So people keep snitching on black people when they're trying to liberate themselves. They end up committing suicide because they can't even stomach or live with what it is that they did. And now fast forward, let's look at religion, right? I mean, I already tied religion into it. You guys get my point when it comes to that. Do study as much research as you need to. For the most part, it'll tell you black people got the King James version of the Bible during slavery. Black people weren't Christians before slavery. A lot of people like to bring up Ethiopia, blah 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 blah, right? Either way, I'm not even going to dive too deep into that, but the way Africa was set up back in those days, everybody wanted to be in Africa because Africa had the resources, right? Africa had the resources. So you had a lot of people that weren't Africans that went to Africa, right? Egyptians nowadays aren't the Africans that were there back in those days because they migrated and they took over and killed the Africans that was there. So if you're going to bring up the Ethiopian Bible, go look to pictures of those Bible. The devil is still depicted as somebody dark. That tells you it has a European influence on it. So I'm not even going to dive too deep into that. You can feel free to research that on your own if you need to. But this video was not to cause any hate, stir up any violence. It's not a hate speech. It's not to get you to hate one person or the other. It's just to give you historical facts that you can look up. Okay, so that's what I want to say for now. Thanks to everyone that has been watching. And let me see. I'm just trying to think real quick if there's something else that I'm missing. Yes, I think that's about it. So feel free to subscribe over here. Feel free to watch my next video over here. Thank you very much for your time and peace.